Alright, good morning. Today is the day we change the transmission fluid, or exchange the transmission fluid, and also do the differentials today on the GX and the transfer case. So it's a driveline fluids kind of day. So we're going to try today, we're going to remove this cowling right here in the front, and we're going to see about being able to put our fluid back in through the transmission cooler, which is right here. So this is the return line back to the transmission. So we're going to see about filling it from there, making it a little easier on ourselves. Alright, so we took that cowling off. Much easier to get to the transmission cooler. So again, we're going to pull this line off after we do the drain, and we should be able to refill from there. Alright, so in order to get to the front diff, you're going to have to drop the shield here that's kind of behind. It's actually what covers the oil pan, although you can get through it. It's very simple though. It's only got 4 bolts, 12 millimeter, 2 in front, 2 in back, and it'll drop right out from under there, and that'll allow us to get to the front diff. Okay, so I got the front diff opened. So it takes in order to get to the diff, you've got to have a 10 millimeter kind of Allen head. I ended up needing to put it on a breaker bar with an adapter to actually break it loose. The bottom one was pretty tough, but got it off. So as like others say, take the top off first, make sure you can be able to fill it, and then take the bottom off. The bottom does have a little magnet in it, and so you'll want to clean that off, of course. So let me see if I can get you a better shot. Okay, so on the driver's side of the diff is the drain plug, and then up high is the vent plug. So that's it right there, and so that's it. So it's on the side. Pretty easy, just a very simple drain and fill. Next we're going to fill it up. We're going to put the drain plug back in, seal it up, new gasket or seat, and then we're going to fill it right until it starts to overflow the top fill hole, and then we'll seal it up, and that'll be it. Alright, so here's my fancy fill apparatus. I had a piece of vinyl tubing laying around, and so I have just stuck it on the end of my bottle, and it goes. And yes, I'm using SuperTech. I'm using the synthetic 7590, well regarded. So here we go. That's what's going in the bolt diffs and the transfer case. Of course, the transmission is going to get Valvoline Maxlife, and here we go. Okay, so just finished filling up the front diff. Sorry, it's kind of a two-handed operation, so I don't have a video of it. But my first attempt is on the right there, that shorter hose, and what I found was a little bit longer hose. I was able to get over the wishbone kind of in the wheel well, and that allowed me to very easily put that end into the fill hole from the diff and be able to turn the bottle upside down and just put it in there. So that was a little easier. I was able to make the first one kind of work, but was much easier with a little bit longer hose. So just under 2 quarts to fill the front diff. There we go. Okay, so we're going to switch gears and move to the transmission drain and fill. So the next part you're going to see is after the initial drain and measuring and figuring out how much actually came out of the transmission. So lots of different ways to measure what you got out of your transmission. My GX is up on ramps, and I drain the transmission from the drain hole, and I got just under 4 quarts. So I pre-measured one of these little solo cups, and right to where you see where they're filled, except for the one that's a little short, is 2 cups. So 2 of those makes a quart. So I got just under 4 quarts. So now we're going to put that back in. Also, I might say, if it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. Okay, so for completeness, I'm leaving in the couple of parts where I show you what I tried and what didn't work, and then get to what did work. So if you want to find what did work, you can skip ahead a little bit, and if you want to see what didn't work and why, then you're welcome to watch this little bit ahead of that. So here we go. Now that the front diff is done, I've got a couple of these quart bottles that make a great funnel. So I cut the bottom out of one and connected it up with another piece of clear tubing into what would be the return line for the transmission. And I cleaned it out real good and then sprayed it with one of my brake cleaner. It's super good for getting all kinds of things, cleaning out funnels and doing whatever. So this has been cleaned out really well, so I don't have any residue from the gear lube. And now we're going to start gently and slowly. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to put 4 quarts back in. Okay, so in hindsight, now looking, it makes sense. This does not work as it is because I think there's no vent. There's no way for the air to escape. So okay, this is working much better. So giving a little vent. I had this tea laying around from a different project. So now we're going to start filling her up. So I'm in process, and this works great. Having a little vent tube on here, even though it kind of comes up here, it's just flowing in. Maybe takes me a minute or two to drain the bottle. So it's not super fast, but it's also not too slow either, and still pretty simple. So on our way to having our first fill done. Okay, so drove it around for a few minutes, make sure it was good and hot again, went through all the gears, reversed, got going pretty good. So cycled the gears. Now we're gonna do it all over again. All right, so the drain and fill is done. I've done it 3 times, which basically worked out to 3 gallons of Valvoline Maxlife, which is 4 quarts, and I got basically 4 quarts out every time, so that worked out pretty well. So I've now put it back in. I'm looking at the procedures. There's a couple of ways to check it. It specifically needs to be at the temperature. I looked at trying to do the jumper thing, but I don't have a piece of wire that quite fits in there. So instead I just used my InstaRead thermometer, and I just shot a reading off the bottom of the transmission pan, and we're at 116, and the spec is it needs to be over 115 and not above 130 Fahrenheit. And so we're at temp, and so I turn the car off, and we're gonna drain it out whatever's left, and then we'll be done. So the next step was to check that the GX was level, which I did with a small torpedo level on the frame, and then open up the check drain plug and let any excess fluid, which there was some excess fluid, drain out of the check plug until it finished draining, and then put that back in. And so at that point it's done. So now we're going to pick up at draining and filling the center differential, or the transfer case, depending on what you want to call it. And I'm going to show you what that looks like and kind of the positioning to be able to fill it. Okay, so I'm going to do the best I can here. This is going really well. So I've got kind of the same setup as before. Got my bottle hooked up to a tube, and I'm just squeezing it and filling it. Having a longer tube lets me actually kind of angle the bottle down a little bit so I can squeeze it out, and then as it kind of gets down, I can let it fill with air. It gives me a little better squeeze again. So pretty straightforward. You can see I already drained it. The drain plug is down low, that big nut, and then same looking nut on top here in the fill hole. They are both 22 millimeter, and both come out. So same as the diffs, you just fill it until it starts to overflow from the fill hole, same as any other manual transmission or diff, and then we're done. I'm using the same synthetic 7590 SuperTech. Okay, so the transfer case is done, or middle differential, whatever you want to call it. It only took about 1.5 quarts of fluid, and so now we're moving on to the rear diff. Also, both plugs take the same 22 millimeter as the center diff. So here is our drain, here's our fill, same procedure. We're just going to drain everything out, put the plug back in, fill this guy until it starts to come out, put the plug back in, and you're done. Real easy. And all I did with the middle and the rear, I just put the suspension to high. That's plenty to get under here with a little low boy crawler. I'm going to jump in here as well to say that it's important that once you start doing the center differential and the rear differential, that the GX is pretty flat, right? So at this point, it's not up on the ramps, that it's flat, so that you're getting a good fill and that your diffs aren't angled, and you're getting a little bit potentially less than you would want. All right, so we're all wrapped up here. So today we did a drain and fill of the transmission. I used 3 1-gallon jugs of Valvoline Maxlife from Walmart. And each drain and fill, when you can see the ramps there with the GX up on the ramps, it drained not quite 4 quarts, which is what's in one of those jugs. So a drain and fill of a jug each time, and then brought it up to temperature with a final drain. Worked great. So we're up to fill line on the transmission. That last drain of the fluid coming out looked nice and red, not black like the others. Then we did all 3 differentials, or you could call the middle one a transfer case, and we went through that. Needed a total of 6 quarts, and I used right at 6 quarts of the SuperTech full synthetic gear lube 7590 into each of those. And the rear diff, where we left off, took almost 3 quarts on its own. So the front was 2, the middle was about 1.5, and the back was closer to 3. Not quite, obviously. It all adds up to 6. So in total, 3 gallons of Maxlife, 6 of the synthetic, and it helped to have, you saw some of my rigs and stuff, to fill it, but did it all here in the driveway on the ground. Having a creeper helped. I will say that I had it up on the ramps to do the initial ATF and also the front diff, and then while I had it up, I put it back down when I was driving it around, and put the GX flat, or sorry, before I put it flat, got all the bolts loose for the transfer case, so that once I got under there, when the truck was flat, it would be easy to undo, fill, and have a level fill when I did that. But I was still able to do that with the suspension set on high. I could just roll under there from the passenger side. So hope that helps. Good luck on your GX.